A few years ago, I drove up the Pacific Coast alone from California to Washington. A lot of people I talk to imagine most California looks like Venice Beach, but between the cities are gigantic, sparsely populated areas. In some areas, if it's late enough, you won't pass another car for hours. So I'd been slowly making my way up and exploring different spots on the way. One night, I was driving pretty late, trying to make some distance for the morning. I'd passed through the last town for a good distance and had a ways to go before the next. At about 2 a.m. in the morning, I was getting a little drowsy and was about 100 miles from the next town. So I decided to start looking for a place to sleep. On Highway 1, you will pass people pulled over on the road, camping quite often, especially closer in towards the cities. But I was in the middle of nowhere and hadn't seen anyone in a long time. There's 0 foot traffic and 0 cars passing. So I decided I'll just pull off the road and sleep in my driver's seat. As I'm looking for a good turnout, I start passing through a curvy wooded area that I needed to slow down for. As I'm coming around a turn at a decent pace, I see a person's legs walking towards me in the dead center of the opposite lane. My first thought is it may be a transient making their way down the road. At 2 a.m. in the morning, though, in the middle of the road. So I slow way down as to not accidentally hit this person, as they are walking in complete pitch black with no light whatsoever. As I come closer, and my headlights begin to show more of the mysterious pedestrian, I see he's wearing long khaki pants and a large duffel bag, a t-shirt, and this bizarre black mask. It looked like some strange high-tech gas mask. The best I can describe it is that he looked like Cabal from Mortal Kombat. By the time I can actually see him clearly, I'm just a few feet from passing him and about going 10 to 15 miles per hour. Now, I've been driving for hours with not another person in sight. No cell service, and I'm just thinking, what the heck am I looking at? As I'm approaching him, I've got my driver's side window completely down, and I blurted, "Holy crap," out of pure confusion. By this time, he's just a few feet away, so he hears me clear as day. His masked eyes snap over to look at me. I assume we made eye contact, but even with my headlights on, the goggles of his mask were pitch black. Just these 2 mirrored pits staring back at me for a couple seconds until I passed. I looked back, and he's completely gone from sight. I downshifted and blasted off like a rocket. I figured, if he was a stranded motorist, he probably would have flagged me down or said something as I passed. But he didn't say anything, just this masked stare. I don't even think he would have looked up if I didn't yell out, "Holy crap!" I tried to imagine what he was doing and what the mask was all about. If it was some kind of night vision, I'd imagine he'd have turned away from the headlights blinding him. The area I was in was about 100 miles south of a military town, so maybe it was some exercise. But why would you be walking in the middle of the road and not even attempt to move? That's a death wish. Anyways, I decided maybe another hour driving wasn't so bad. I don't think I'll ever know what that strange encounter was about. Back in the 1980s, in the small town where I lived, there wasn't really a lot to do. A group of us kids kind of formed and we would make our own adventures every weekend. I was around 15 years old at the time, and the 7 other kids I hung out with were around the same age. One weekend, we all met up at the nature trail just to walk and joke around. As we were walking along the trail, somebody mentioned that there was an abandoned honor farm not far from where we were. We all thought it was a good idea to go there and check out this scary and mysterious abandoned building. We walked for about a mile when we reached it. I remembered having a high school teacher who told us a story about a friend who had gone there. His friend was alone, and a short time after he had toured this scary old building, he walked outside only to be met by 3 Doberman pinschers. My teacher said that the dogs were snarling at his friend, and he decided that his only option was to run away as fast as he could. The dogs chased him to the fence, where he proceeded to climb over the fence. When he found himself safely on the other side of the fence, he heckled at the dogs. Suddenly, the dogs stopped barking and growling, and they looked at the fence in a way that was methodical. They approached the fence and began literally climbing it. They used their legs as they climbed the fence in the same way a person would. His friend ran away as fast as he could, and the dogs never caught up to him. This story had left me with real curiosity about the place, so I was excited to go. We arrived at the notorious building, and we all ran inside and split up as we explored this crazy building. Myself and my very best friend headed up the concrete stairway to the 2nd floor, where we walked in and out of the old abandoned rooms that were filled with traces of the past. There was graffiti splattered all over the walls, so we knew that many others also had been there exploring and damaging everything in sight. We came to this room that was completely dark, and we stood outside of the doorway, too afraid to go in. At this point, 2 guys from the group showed up, and we dared them to go in. One of the guys looked at us and rolled his eyes and just walked into the room as he felt along the wall to guide him. He was in the room for what seemed like a very long minute. Suddenly, he jumped out with a scary "Boo!" as we all jumped backwards and then laughed at what he had done. At that moment, he looked down at his hands, and they seemed to be covered with what looked like blood. "It's probably just red paint," I said, as I saw the fear in his eyes. "Let's go back downstairs to the 1st floor." All 4 of us ran down the stairs as we met the others in the hallway, right off the staircase. One of the guys in the group was a joker. We all told him about the red gunk on the guy's hands from that room on the 2nd floor, and he stared to joke about it, as well as we all laughed. As everyone was standing there listening to this guy joke around, I turned towards the main foyer that was just feet away from where we were standing. As I looked, I suddenly saw a man walking through the foyer. He walked at an angle, sort of left to right, with confidence. He was very tall, and he didn't even turn to look at us. He was wearing a long overcoat that had a hood that was pulled up over his head. He was well dressed and was wearing nice shoes. I don't know why I remembered his shoes, but I took note of it. He just walked from where I could see him, and then he was out of view. I interrupted the guys who was talking and told him that I had just seen a man walking in that direction. Everyone looked in that direction, but nobody could see the man. We had all decided we should leave and start heading back to the area where we had been dropped off by our parents. As we walked, we forgot all about the possible blood on our friend's hands and the man that I had seen, and we just joked around, having fun as we walked. That night, I spent the night at my friend's house. They had this rabbit pen in their backyard with several adorable rabbits that my friend's mother had taken in and fed after they were abandoned as babies. The next morning we got up and went into the kitchen where my friend's dad told us not to go in the backyard. We pressed him as to why we couldn't go out there, and he told us that someone had come into their yard that night and cut off the heads of all the rabbits. He said the strangest part was that there was no blood at all. It was almost as if someone drank the blood right after chopping their heads off. Right away, I knew that someone had followed us from the Anna farm, and that same person, or whatever it was, had killed their rabbits. Something was seriously up with that place. It has since been torn down, and nothing remains of that old building. There were so many scary stories coming out about that place, and the city decided to level it. There has even been a movie made about it called The Anna Farm a few years back. People may not think that evil is real, but I can assure you, everyone, it is. I would add a photo, but for some reason I'm not allowed to do that. Anyone can look up the movie. It's called The Honor Farm. You can also look up pictures of that old scary building.